out a corrupted official in their factory or company or so on. And this would have a ripple effect. So if one town or one factory goes on strike, the other, factory would do the same thing, demanding the same demands the other factory did. And they would win, and this would actually work. Until, like I said, the 2008, I'll go back to that. Until 2008, where they had this uprising in Mahalla, the one I explained on April 6th. The Mahalla uprising played definitely a major role leading up to 2011. It was always like, Mahalla happened, the revolution is happening soon. And so many people in the activist community and these social movements believe that the time is coming. It's just a matter of time that the revolution would happen after the Mahalla uprising. But it was obviously hushed, and it was buried, and it wasn't talked about, and the media completely ignored it. But again, the role of independent journalists, the role of citizen journalists and the bloggers, they were keen on spreading this information. And this is how I learned about it, was through my class. We had a guest speaker who is a blogger and an activist and a journalist who came to talk about the Mahalla uprising. However, this access of information is merely on a class basis, because if you're wealthy enough to have a computer or the time to actually get educated, 60% of the population lives on $2 a day. So they're not concerned about politics, they're not concerned about Facebook and Twitter or blogging or even reading the newspaper. They're concerned about feeding their family, making a living. Being alive, basically, finding a home, getting married, and this, these are the people that made the revolution happen. In 2010, now jumping ahead, we had the largest number records of sit-ins, protests, strikes, you name it, from everything possible. Obviously, the recession, the global recession, had completely affected the lives of Egyptians, because when you have a corrupted system and the rich used to steal from one another, and then the rich kind of get poor because of the recession and the global effect of the economy, then they start stealing from the poor people. And that's when things really deteriorated. There was a big campaign for minimum wage that started since 2008 really, but was, we mobilized a lot for minimum wage in 2010. There was a case that was filed in the court, and the case was won, but they never actually implemented the law to set a decent minimum wage, even until now. And I'll jump back to where we are now and talk a little bit more about that. But not only in the working force, not only was the demand for minimum wage and so on, but it was also to form independent unions that would fight for workers' rights and that would demand, better representation, because the state unions that were formed in Nasser's time in 1957 have nothing to do with workers. The elections are rigged. It's basically a stealing machine. Workers pay their union fees but never get the adequate services or even the decent representation. And they're usually just state officials. So if you work for the state and the state is supposed to represent you, it doesn't make any sense. So the push for building and establishing independent union happened once through this, the real estate tax collectors went on strike, and for 3 months, the profits of the real estate tax went down by 90%. So they raised their wages by 300%. And not only that, they continued with the committee of the strike committee that they formed, and they established their own independent union. And there are about 55,000 workers. So that was a big win. And everybody, every working sector since then looked at the real estate tax collector as the model. This is what we want to reach. And, it was not as easy to build these free unions, because you would always get hassled by the state. The federation would not agree to have this union established, would not recognize it. But after the revolution, I'll talk more about where is that now, which is a great start. Minimum wage, the recession, the privatization policies. On the democratic end, we have still emergency law in place. In 2010, basically, the emergency law has been in place since 1981. So we've been in a state of emergency for nearly 30 years. Under this emergency law, you basically have no rights. You can be arrested, detained for however long. You don't have rights to a lawyer. They can search your house. They can arrest you for whatever reason. People on the street on a daily basis get harassed by police. It's no wonder that the first things that were burned in the revolution were police stations and police cars, because these are the exact symbols that repress people every day. There was a big case that erupted in Alexandria. Khalid Said, he's a young man in his 20s who refused to be harassed by the cops under this emergency law. They got him, arrested him. They didn't even legally arrest him, but they basically kidnapped him, tortured him, beat him to death. He died. And Khalid Said was a main reason for a lot of people that took to the streets for the first time. That was huge. It was in Alexandria, and it spread around all of Egypt. And even a lot of people would draw back to how it happened in Tunisia, that it was Bouazizi. Well, in Egypt, we say that it was our Khalid Said that made this happen, because something like the Kullina Khalid Said, we're all Khalid Said page started because of Khalid Said. So I'm sure you've heard about Wael Ghunaim and his role. And this page was, this Facebook page was done because of this case. And a lot of people went out in solidarity, went out to protest against emergency law, to end emergency law, saying that we're all Khalid Said. We're all under this law, subject to this kind of behavior and treatment. The case is still going on. The people, the officers who, beat up and tortured and killed Khalid Said are still on trial today. A year later, it has been a year, and they haven't been sentenced yet, which is part of the reason why we're starting another revolution. But definitely there's something wrong in our legal system for someone like Khalid Said to have died and have a revolution happen in his because of what happened to him, and not have these people held responsible is completely unacceptable, especially after the revolution. Khalid Said, and then after Khalid Said, there was high prices. Every food item just went insanely, high. The kilo of tomato was basically 10 pounds when it was used to 10 Egyptian pounds when it used to be 2 Egyptian pounds. The wages didn't go up. There was still the battle for minimum wage. Average Egyptians, like I said, live on $2 a day, and that's no way of feeding a family or living anyways. And that pushed a lot of people. So how we as social movements would mobilize and would protest, we would go to the urban and poor areas and start doing these exhibitions of what's going on with the high prices, linking it to the privatization policies, linking it to the regime itself. So there was some awareness because people know that they're struggling on a daily life. But when you make this struggle collective, that's when it becomes powerful. That's when it transcends to, oh, this is not just happening to me alone, this is happening to all these people, and this is the cause. So the role of the social movements and activists and opposition was basically to connect and interlink all these struggles collectively. In the end of 2010, we had the parliamentary elections, where that was just the icing on the cake that year. The people who believed in the reformist ways, let's engage in elections, win seats, change it from the inside out, they got a huge slap in the face. Because this election was so rigged and was so obscenely fraudulent that the NDP, the National Democratic Party, the Mubarak Party, won 97% of the seats. It was, that day I remember I was sitting and monitoring, getting phone calls from all over the place about what's going on in polls and so on. People went into polling stations and the boxes were already full of ballots. There were people with weapons coming out of polling stations scaring people to vote. So even the groups, the opposition parties that believed Muslim Brotherhood have always engaged in the parliamentary process. This is how they believed change would come, and this is, in 2005, they won 88 seats of parliament, which is the highest number of opposition ever in the history of Egypt, and they really didn't do anything. In those 5 years that they were in parliament, they didn't implement any of their, or make any impact. So when they engaged in the other election in 2010, they got no seats. Even in Wafd Party, which is another secular, opposition party, they ran a huge campaign. Maybe 200 of their members ran for seats. They won nothing. Nobody won anything. So everybody boycotted the elections. Usually the leftists and all these social movements don't even engage in the process of parliamentary elections because why would they give it legitimacy anyways? And so people who believed in this reformist got completely discouraged and knew that this way is not gonna happen, not the reformist way. The end of 2010, which was crucial, Tunisia was going on. The blogging and the bloggers, the activists, the journalists, the opposition movement was really keeping a close eye on what's happening in Tunisia, because we knew once an Arab country would fall, just one dictator would fall in the region, it would be just a domino effect that would be unstoppable. And that's exactly what happened. In Sidi Bouzid, what was going on, we were getting all the information basically through the internet, through Nawad channel, through the YouTube videos. We were, exchanging information with activists through social networks, through Twitter and Facebook and so on. And that gave a lot of hope for us. So on January 14th, when Ben Ali stepped down, we knew this is our moment. We knew that we have to play on this momentum to hopefully make something happen in Egypt. And that's exactly what we did. January 15th, we were at the Tunisian embassy, we were at the press syndicate, we were chanting, revolution in Tunisia, revolution in Egypt, revolution in the Arab world. The police were looking at us and laughing. People thought we were crazy. People thought this would never happen. You opened the TV and it was like, oh, Tunisia, Tunisia is so different. Egypt is not like Tunisia. What happened in Tunisia can never happen in Egypt.